in the calling this meeting is that this is a problem that was created by the Conservatives in the previous government.
Tonight, the Liberals begin their strategy to overcome the legal roadblocks standing between them and completion of the Trans Mountain expansion.
The sexual exploitation of our women, the racism, the discrimination is still rampant at Kiosk and at Manitoba Hydro.
And First Nation leaders say that hydroelectric expansion in their neck of the woods is being done at a heavy expense. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. We begin tonight in Ottawa, where Parliament is not in session yet, but the Standing Committee on Natural Resources held a rare emergency meeting. It follows on the heels of last week's federal court decision to halt the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion until after certain conditions are met.
High up on that list are protecting the environment, a more comprehensive consultation with the original title holders of the land. Annette Francis has more on what went on.
The meeting came at the request of 4 Conservative and NDP members of the Natural Resources Committee. They're seeking answers following the ruling of a federal court last week, which found consultation with Indigenous communities was not robust enough for the Trans Mountain pipeline approval to be valid. Conservative natural resources critic Shannon Stubbs began the meeting with a motion to put pressure on the Liberal government for answers on how to move forward following the decision.
That 6 meetings be allocated for this study, that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Natural Resources appear before the committee for an hour each at the first meeting of the study, that the first meeting be held no later than September 6th, 2018, that this study be concluded before November 2018.
But not much happened over the hour-long meeting, except for a lot of finger-pointing, according to NDP MP Richard Cannings.
The irony in the calling this meeting is that this is a problem that was created by the Conservatives in the previous government. And it's doubly ironic, for instance, to hear Jason Kenney complaining about the incompetence of the Liberals in this file when he was at the cabinet table when this mess was created.
Then came the vote on the motion to hold a study on the Liberal handling of the pipeline and demand.
Okay, motion defeated.
According to Paul Lefebvre, the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources, there will be answers.
It's a lengthy decision. There's a lot of information in there that we need to review and make sure that on a go-forward basis that we are respecting our obligations, our constitutional obligations with respect to consulting First Nations and as well as on making sure that we're protecting the environment. That's why we need to move forward.
A big disappointment, says Stubbs.
It is utterly outrageous that the Prime Minister has clearly sent the Liberals into committee today to deny Canadians the opportunity to hear about their plan for the Trans Mountain expansion.
It's not clear yet whether the Liberals will send the federal court's decision to the Supreme Court or implement the lower court's directive to begin comprehensive consultations and protect the earth. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the federal government is looking carefully at the ruling by the Federal Court of Appeal to determine what the best path forward is. Trudeau and BC Premier John Horgan spoke at a joint press conference today. The two leaders have been at odds over the pipeline.
Building a strong, resilient economy for the future means taking into account relationship and partnership with Indigenous peoples and full reconciliation, and it also means making sure that the science and environmental protections are world-class. The court ruling indicated that we still have a little more work to do in those particular areas. That's exactly what we're looking at.
When it comes to the specific project, we'll see how that unfolds, but I think the bigger challenge for us is recognizing that rights and title exist and that reconciliation must take place, and I think this map for us will help not just with this project but a host of other initiatives as well.
And we want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca. and on youtube.com/APTN News. Also, you can follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news.
been 2 weeks since a damning Manitoba report outlined decades of abuse and racism at the hands of hydro workers. Since then, several First Nations have claimed abuse is still rampant in the north. On Tuesday, Northern Manitoba leader urged the province to work with communities to do more. Brittany Hobson brings us this.
The fallout from 2 reports outlining serious allegations against Manitoba hydro workers continues. But claims of sexual abuse and racism are nothing new, according to First Nations leaders. This is just the first time it's been publicized.
What is more shocking is that it almost took 40 years to address these injustices.
One report released in May included testimony of abuse dating back to the 1960s. Another released last year examined the workplace culture of the ongoing Kiosk Generation Project. Manitoba Kiwetanawe Ogimaganak Grand Chief Garrison Sati says time's up when it comes to abuse in the north.
The ugly beast of racism has been prevalent in our workplaces in the north. Our people have been oppressed. Our people have been treated as if they were second-class citizens in their own lands. That will stop.
Workplace harassment has also trickled into the boardroom as well. Martina Saunders resigned as the vice president of the board overseeing construction of Kiosk last year, after experiencing bullying from upper levels of hydro.
The sexual exploitation of our women, the racism, the discrimination is still rampant at Kiosk and at Manitoba Hydro. I didn't feel safe to voice my concerns or to speak up on behalf of my First Nation anymore sitting at that board, so I had to step down.
She says in order to address these concerns, Hydro needs to incorporate safe spaces for Indigenous women.
How can we begin to heal from these atrocities in predominantly white spaces? We can't heal that way. They need to be Indigenous spaces. They need to be culturally appropriate, and we need to feel safe.
She has since filed a complaint with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission and is still dealing with it. Sati echoes the need for spaces of healing and urges the province and Manitoba Hydro to work with First Nations to create them.
We're moving towards a trauma-informed approach to ensure that no further harm is inflicted upon these victims and support the development of a healing strategy for these victims.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We need to take a quick break.
But when we come back, the fallout from the summer's wildfires in British Columbia. First, here's a story we're working on for you tomorrow.
I'm Kent Driscoll in Iqaluit, and this is Lake Geraldine, the source of Iqaluit's drinking water. The city of Iqaluit has recently banned washing cars and asked residents to take showers instead of baths to conserve water. But why? Look at all this clean, potable water. Like many of the challenges facing Nunavut, the answer isn't as simple as it seems. Iqaluit's water shortage, coming this week on APTN National News.
And here we go to the East Coast. We have sunshine in St. John's, Newfoundland, and 19 degrees, 26 in Fredericton and sunshine. To northern Quebec, we have La Grande River, 13 in cloud. Happy Valley Goose Bay over in Labrador, 16 in sunshine, 13 sunny in Cartwright. Lots of cloud in most of Quebec, 22 in Val d'Or, Saint Jovite, 32 in Montreal, 25 in Quebec City. To southern Ontario, 32s for Toronto, London, Sarnia, and Windsor. Lots of sunshine down there. Up north, Kapuskasing is in at 20, Elliott Lake 23 with some cloud, 19 cloud in Thunder Bay. To northern Manitoba, 12 in Churchill, 14 in Thompson, lots of sun. God's Lake is 16 and sunshine, same with Norway House. 19 and sunny in Winnipeg, 29 and sunny in Brandon. Southern Saskatchewan, 22 in Swift Current, 19 in Yorkton, 21 in Estevan. Lots of sunshine down there. Meadow Lake, sunny and 19. Stony Rapids 9 and cloudy. Uranium City 7 and cloud.
Welcome back. This is the week that the kids are back in school, and in Ontario, it could have been an unprecedented chance for all students to learn about Indigenous history. But the Ford government, without warning, ended Phase 2 of planned changes to the curriculum. Todd Lamourand reports on a job half done with no signs it will be completed anytime soon.
Erica Bronovan is running for re-election in October. She wants to be an Ottawa Carleton school trustee for 4 more years. And she thought she'd be overseeing the implementation of an Indigenous curriculum this year.
And when you start cancelling the education enhancements, we're really doing a disservice to the next generation, which could be much further along than I was when they're leaving high school.
In July, the newly elected Ford government cancelled curriculum writing sessions to be held in Toronto. They were in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, number 62 and 63. Professor Theodore Christo was all set to participate when he was told to stay home.
And there were lots of people who were just left going, what just happened? We had an opportunity to indigenize our curriculum, respond to the TRC in a reasonable way, and just dropped it.
Some Ontario schools hold Aboriginal Awareness Weeks, or bring in an elder to talk about culture and teach arts and crafts. But the Indigenous curriculum was going to be far more ambitious.
And better information about Indigenous histories is being worked into several different curriculums, and it's something that isn't being seen as a chapter in a history class at this point. It's something that needs to be taught throughout all of the social studies, the social sciences.
From elementary school to high school, the history of Indigenous people in residential schools would have been taught.
Really critical that the general population of Canada and even Ontario learn about the history of our peoples as First Peoples of this country, as First Peoples of this land.
Saul Mamakwa has brought up the issue in question period and written a letter to the Minister of Education, Lisa Thompson.
I need to remind and put the government to account that they have to do their part as well.
But the government says the curriculum is on pause, even though Phase 1 has already been done. Bronovan says her school district will try to implement Phase 1.
If the provincial government isn't going to be doing this work, we need to ensure that the school board is doubling down on it then.
But she only represents one school district, and Professor Christo warns of going forward with only half the work done.
But if you just give someone a document that is in Phase 1 of a 2-phase revision, and they may know nothing about it, that's not good curriculum development.
APTN reached out to the Ministry of Education, but a short statement from them only said there would be more to say on the process in the near future. Todd Lamourand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The wildfire situation in British Columbia is starting to die down. Many had been blaming climate change for the fire, but where does mismanagement of the forests by business interests fit in? We spoke to someone earlier about that. Joanne Hammond is an archaeologist and anthropologist. Joanne, thanks for joining us. You've recently written a post about the intensity of the BC wildfires and why climate change shouldn't bear all the responsibility just yet, but that mismanagement by industry has a huge role to play. Can you explain?
Well, I've been watching the developments in the BC forest over the last 20 years. And the intensity of these fires is no surprise, watching how forest management has been exclusively tailored to the timber harvesting industry and not designed around creating resilient communities. And watching the sort of media and public assessment unfold as this summer's wildfires are matching last year's wildfires in intensity, it struck me as a giant elephant in the room that while we've handed over management of these huge area of land to these timber harvesting companies, they are not bearing any of the responsibility for the state of the forest that's causing these fires to burn out of control.
Why do you feel we're not hearing more about this angle of the fire situation?
Why do you think we're not? That's a really good question. I think people are inclined right now to focus on climate change in general exacerbating the conditions, which I'm grateful for, and I think that if anything's going to draw more attention to how we should act to curb climate change, that's wonderful. But I can't really explain why we're not discussing who is ultimately responsible for this, and even when we do hear discussions of on-the-ground factors besides climate change, it tends to be on educating the general public about fire safety and controlling their personal behaviors so as to reduce the ignitions. And I can only surmise that there's so much financial and political investment in these forests, in perpetuating the management for the benefit of the forestry companies, that we'd just rather not talk about that.
Joanne, there have been some ideas put forward, such as better forest management and clearing out some of the trees left behind by logging. Can you speak briefly about those?
Yeah, some of there's been a few really progressive sort of white paper style suggestions put forth by forest industry professionals, forest ecologists, and academics over the last year, which include just a shift in management priorities from economic extraction to creating resilient forests, particularly around urban and wildland interfaces. And so not just reducing the fuel load that's out there by prescribed burns, but changing the whole structure for how we prescribe reforesting areas after they're harvested, for example, and aiming to create natural breaks in ecosystems by restoring biodiversity that has been lost by creating these forest plantations and removing natural fire cycles. And so some of it involves reducing the load that's out there right now that's going to keep burning over the next few years until we do something about it, but also planning strategically over the next couple of decades to reduce even the risk of those loads building up again around where we are. And the reason that it's important to talk about the responsibility for forest management for this, rather than lay it all on climate change, is that we really can make a difference if we adjust our priorities and policies to favor livable landscapes rather than timber extraction for profit.
Joanne, we're going to have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time to speak about this with us today.
My pleasure.
Artifacts dating back to the 1500s have been discovered in Quebec. That story's coming up.
But first, here's a look at the rest of Wednesday's weather forecast.
To northern Alberta, we have 13 in Grand Prairie with sunshine, 12 in Peace River, 11 in Fort McMurray, sunshine everywhere there. 20 in Edmonton, 20 in Red Deer, 20 in Calgary, lots of sunshine, 24 in Medicine Hat, 22 in Lethbridge. 20 in Tofino and mix of sun and clouds. Campbell River, 23, mix of sun and clouds. Up in Quesnel, 20 with a mix of sun and clouds. Northern BC, we've got 15 at Dease Lake, lots of cloud at Prince Rupert, Sandspit, 16, and 16 in Prince George. 11 in Whitehorse, 13 in Dawson City with some cloud there. Up in Old Crow, we've got 13 with a mix of sun and cloud. Norman Wells is 13. Cloudy. Wati is rain and 8. Trout Lake, 14 with a mix of sun and cloud. Tech is in at 8 and cloud. Colville Lake, mix of sun and cloud, 9. Deline, 6 and mix of sun and cloud. Baker Lake, rain and 8. Cambridge Bay, 2 and rain. Arviat, 10 and rain, and Chesterfield's the only one with some sunshine, and that's at 6 degrees. In Nunavut, we have 11 in Iqaluit, 9 in Cape Dorset, some sunshine there. Pangmatang, 10, very sunny. And up in Resolute, -1 with a mix of sun and cloud.
Welcome back. Archaeologists have been digging into the old Abenaki village at Odanak, Quebec for 8 years now. They found artifacts proving that the site has been occupied as far back as 1571. Danielle Rochette has more about what they're looking for.
Donc, en fait, c'est un trou qui devrait dater à peu près de, il y a 400 ans, 500 ans en arrière.
Using patience and determination, Geneviève Trévaux and her team dig cautiously, sift, scrutinize, analyze, all in search of the past. They want an answer to that question. What was the diet of the Wabanaki like between the 15th and 18th centuries?
On veut essayer de voir un peu l'évolution de la diète, en fait, le avant-contact, le contact et puis après la période coloniale. Puis la différence entre qu'est-ce qu'on mangeait. Est-ce que tout d'un coup, la proportion d'animaux sauvages a diminué par rapport aux animaux domestiques du moment que la réserve est arrivée, que les gens avaient plus le droit d'aller chasser à l'extérieur?
Trévaux's archaeological team has been digging since 2010 on the site of the old mission of Odanak, formerly called St. Francis. They turn up the remains of a fortified Abenaki village with part of a palisade and long houses and lots of pearls from stone to shell to glass. And now they are finding more.
Les gens qui sont ici, les étudiantes qui sont ici, ont retrouvé des fosses très anciennes qui datent à peu près du 16e, 15e, 16e, 17e siècle, avec beaucoup de charbon, du maïs, des graines. Et puis là, elles s'affairent à retrouver en fait tous les petits pollens qu'on retrouve dans ces foyers qui représentent en fait les plantes qui ont été mangées par les Wabanaki dans ces périodes-là.
But Trévaux is pretty sure about one thing, the same accessibility to the river and fish over the centuries.
Ce qui a le moins changé probablement, c'est l'accessibilité à la rivière, donc la pêche. Je pense que tout le long de toutes ces années-là, de ces différentes périodes, on va toujours retrouver du poisson, toujours de l'esturgeon, de la perche chaude, etc., qu'on voit encore aujourd'hui consommer ici à Odanak.
In the coming weeks, Trévaux and her team plan to also do geophysical research near the old church, as some oral traditions mention graves buried there. Danielle Rochette, APTN National News, Odanak, Quebec.
That's all the news we have for tonight. You can always find more at aptnnews.ca.
I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Thanks.